Welcome to the Chronicles of the Christian Drama Queen podcast. I'm your host and the original Christian drama queen, Lisa Schaefer, and I'm glad that you are here. I can promise you that I know what it's like to think like a lover of Jesus, but live like a hot mess every day. And if you can relate, you're in the right place. Everything from the craziness of homeschooling my kids to overcoming deep wounds of abandonment and abuse. Stick around, sister, because I've walked down all of those paths, and I've got decades of healing and hope that God has just called me to share with you today. So here we go. Well, thanks for joining me today, guys. I'm glad that you are here. I have some stuff I want to talk about today. Today is the birth date of my oldest son, and that just brings about some really cool memories for me. It brings about, the remembrances of him just being teeny tiny. He was 5 pounds when we brought him home from the hospital. It brings about just things that happened in his life when he was little, and it was just me and his dad and him. And those were really sweet days. We didn't know a whole lot about being parents. In fact, we were really bad at it. We didn't know what we were doing. And most people don't when they're brand new parents. There was all that fear and all that anxiety. Now he's 33 years old. You know, when you get older, then there's a whole new list of fears and anguishes to deal with. I don't really have permission to tell a lot of his story yet, and one of these days I think we will book an actual interview for my podcast and we'll be able to share part of his story. But the story I want to tell you guys today is about the babies that we lost. When you go through infertility and you go through adoption, there are just some things that happen things that just go wrong. Each one of those episodes has its own anguish and its own pain and trauma. Now, we've been fortunate to have 3 beautiful adoption stories where those babies came home and lived with us. But we actually have 3 adoption stories that did not bring joy and peace to our home. They brought pain. And so today I'm going to tell you those stories. And by the time I'm done with these stories, I want to be able to impart to you how much faith and trust God deserves from us, even during times that are hard and painful. So let me tell you first about Tabitha and Stephanie. Tabitha and Stephanie were 2 little girls. They were 3 and 4 years old. This would have been, I'm going to say it would have been 1990. My husband and I had been married and trying for several years to get pregnant. Of course, when you are dealing with infertility and you decide you're going to adopt, you tell people, you tell everybody at church, you tell all your friends and family, you tell your neighbors. Your hope is that when they hear of someone who's looking for a family to adopt a child, they will let those people know and they'll put you in contact. It's a little networking thing that adoptive families do. That's exactly what happened. My husband's sister had a friend who came to us and said, I have 2 little girls and I have been diagnosed with a terminal illness. I need someone I can trust to take my daughters. From that point on, we began to spend time with these little girls, and we had known them already because when we would go to our niece's birthday party, these little girls would be there. So we knew who they were, and we began to spend time with them. Every weekend, they went to church with us. Sometimes during the week, they would go shopping with us. We spent Saturdays at the zoo and the park, and we just began to get to know them better, knowing or presuming that what was happening was that their mother was getting more and more ill, and we would make arrangements to adopt them. And we went through an attorney. We had an attorney. We all met with the attorney, my husband and I, and these children's mother met with the attorney as she began to plan on us adopting these kids. This went on for several months as we planned and prepared. So one day, while I was working, the girls were with my sister-in-law, and their father, whom we had been told was completely out of the picture, showed up on her doorstep with a court order in hand and said, "These are my daughters. I am taking them," and they left. And that was it. And this was the last I saw of these 2 little girls, whom, of course, by then, our hearts were fully engaged and we already were in love with. As it turned out, their birth mother was lying. She was not terminally ill, but she was mentally ill. And when the father found out that she was doing what she was doing to make arrangements to give her children up for adoption, he drove up 2 states, picked up his daughters, and left. And we never saw them again. To say that we were heartbroken is a significant understatement. We lost our daughters, and we were devastated. Now, looking back, there's some things that we could have done to make sure that this didn't happen, and blah blah blah. But when you're just so ready to be a parent, and someone is so ready to make you one, you're probably not thinking as clearly as you could. The follow-up to that is that I have had no contact at all with either one of these little girls. I don't know how they're doing. I hope they're doing well, and haven't heard anything from their biological parents at all. So I don't know how things went for them. My prayer is that this was a good thing for them when they were taken. Years went by. We adopted our oldest son, who's today is his birthday. We adopted him, and he has a story, and I'd love to be able to share that with you, and I will. But then a couple of years went by, and we were approached by a woman who was going into officers training in the Air Force, and she was pregnant, and she was friends with friends of ours from church, and she had decided that she wanted to give this child up for adoption. And so we began to meet with her and spend some time with her and have dinner with her and talk about how we would be raising this child. And by then, our oldest was almost 2. Valentine's Day came, and we had the room ready, and we were expecting a little boy, and we were told the day before she went in to be induced for labor that she could not sign that paperwork, and she had changed her mind. So of course we had a nursery all ready for a baby, and then we shut the door, and that baby did not come. We again were heartbroken. See, every time you're planning on a child and that child doesn't come, you mourn that loss much like you would a death. And I think that's really, maybe that seems like it's overstated. And I obviously don't in any way say that I know what it's like to lose a child that I gave a biological birth to. I don't know what that's like. I just know that for us, losing these adoptions or having them fall through is painful. And we lost that little boy in February of 1994. That little boy would now be 30 years old. Actually 31 as I record this. You know, we lost that child, and then we just assumed God had something else planned. We left the doors shut to the nursery for 4 months, and then we decided, okay, we're going to tear the nursery down, we're going to put the crib away, we're going to put the baby dresser up, we're going to make sure the bassinet's stored in the garage. We put all those things away, and we moved our room into that room because it would be right next to our oldest son's room. So this is June the 3rd. And on June the 4th, we got a phone call from our attorney, and he was at the hospital, and a woman who had given birth before and given a child up for adoption before with him had called him at the last minute after she gave birth and said, I've got this baby girl up here. I just want to give it up for adoption. Please bring the paperwork. So he did, and because we had a home study, which is what you legally have to have in place before you can adopt a child in our state, that home study was on file. It's good for a year. That meant that 4 months ago, when we had our home study done and we lost that placement, we were ready to take on a child in case of an emergency immediately. And here she was, our daughter, at the hospital, and we went on Monday morning. We put all our stuff away in the nursery on Saturday. She was born on Sunday, and we picked her up on Monday morning. A couple of years went by. In fact, I think it was almost 4 years. And we were contacted by a friend of a family member again, who already had a child, and now she was having another one. And her boyfriend and his family told her they didn't want anything to do with this child. She actually lived with us during the last couple of months of her pregnancy. So I actually became very, very attached to her 1-year-old, as well as the plan of having the second baby, which we were told was going to be a boy. We named him. We went into labor with him, with her. We went into labor with her. We helped her deliver that child in January of 1998. But we did not go home with that baby. Her boyfriend and her boyfriend's parents showed up at the hospital and began to tell her how supportive and helpful and whatnot they would be. And I don't blame them. As a grandmother now, that's probably what I would do. So we didn't get that baby. And I fed that baby. I delivered that baby with her, and I fed that baby, and I named that baby, and I had to hand him back over to his biological family. And on a cold and wet and rainy, icy, sleety January 28th, we went home, and we went home empty-handed. And again, that was painful. That was hard. There was loss. I remember someone asking a friend of mine why we were so upset over losing a child that was not ours. And to be quite honest with you, I said at the time that we were in mourning just like we would have had we given birth. I don't know that for sure because I've never given birth. But I do know that I had to keep saying to myself, and I had to keep saying to my husband and to other people who would ask me, I had to keep saying, God knows best. I know He knows best. If we're losing this child for whatever reason, it's because God has a plan for another child out there for us. And what do you know? January of 98 that we lost this child, and then 9 months later in October of 98 our third child was born, our youngest. I tell you this story because, well, first of all, the podcast is called The Chronicles of the Christian Drama Queen, and these chronicles, these events were huge parts of my faith walk, because in the midst of great trauma and hurt and pain, I had to keep saying to myself and to the people around me, but I still trust God. And as many of you know, the Bible studies I've written about, I write about Joseph, the life of Joseph from Genesis, and I talk about how he was in all of these horrible circumstances, and we never hear of him complaining. We never hear of him questioning God's plan for him. That's fascinating to me, because I can honestly tell you I wasn't that way. When I was brokenhearted and we lost 4 children to adoption placements that did not happen, when we had our hearts engaged, when we thought we were having children, I asked God several times why. In both the first and the last situations, I did not know how well that child would be cared for, and it was frightening to me, based upon what I was seeing, that they might not be cared for very well, and I couldn't do a thing about it. There was nothing I could do about it but let them go. And it's okay to get with God and go, but why? I don't understand why. Now, my answers came months later in the situation with all of my children. When I lost adoption placement, we lost adoption placements. Months later, we would find out that God had another plan for us. In all of those situations, we brought home children who had struggled with trauma in the womb. They had struggled with alcoholism in the womb, or drug abuse in the womb, or violence in the womb. God chose us to be their parents. That, to me, again, is fascinating. I don't know why. I look back and I go, why would you pick me to mother these children? They're amazing and wonderful, and I love them. They're mine. There's no doubt in my mind that they're mine. But why me when they needed so much? Why would you choose me? It's an honor, and it's daunting. It's humbling. The loss of 4 children and the birth of 3 children that came home with me has taught me, if nothing else, has taught me that God really does know the plans He has for me. Plans not to harm us, but to give us a future and a hope. And He knows what's coming because He's already there. He knows who's coming to live with me because He's already there when they come. And I'm not there yet. many times what's going on in my life, I'm not there where He is. So I just want to encourage you today to think about the fact that when your plans fall through, God's plans are better. And He knows the plans He has for you. And He's not wringing His hands in worry when your plans fall through. Can you think about that? Thanks for joining me today, guys. I just want to remind you of a couple of things. My podcast is now a year old and coming next week on March 1st. If you go to freedom.christiandramaqueen.com, anybody that signs up there at freedom.christiandramaqueen.com, if you sign up there, you will be entered to win one of the Bible studies I've written, either Discarded, A Daughter's Journey to Reclaim Freedom and Forgive the Father Who Left Her Behind, or The Christian Victim's Guide to Forgiving the Unforgivable. You'll be able to pick one of those, and if I draw you, you'll be able to get the undated Discarded planner, which has scripture verses and all kinds of other stuff in it that goes along with the Bible study, Discarded Bible study. So those are available to you if I draw your name next week, March 1st. freedom.christiandramaqueen.com is where you go to sign up for that. And of course, make sure that you're sharing the podcast with other people. You are going to Amazon to look up those Bible studies. I'd appreciate ratings and reviews if you guys have read them or done them. Also, I'd appreciate your ratings and reviews if you've been here to the podcast and you have found any kind of redemption value here. I appreciate that. And don't forget, of course, that you can go to my website, christiandramaqueen.com, and listen to the podcasts there. You can find other things there. There's a blog there. I do some writing and sharing there. And then, of course, the videos of most of my podcasts are on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, Christian Drama Queen. So you can check me out there and listen. Thanks again for joining me today. You know I love you.